Look, don't put your down.
Oh,
I ain't no food.
Come on.
What's going on?
Man, this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film A Quiet Place.
What? What'd you say?
You're being every person in the theater during this movie right now.
Wait, I gotta finish my carrot.
Okay, finish a carrot. Get in the game, Shahir.
Oh my God.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show.
Sorry, this carrots are surprisingly hard to chew, people. Chew at least 30 times.
Yeah, you can't. You have to masticate really hard.
Oh man, I have so many jokes, but I'm not gonna say any of them.
Boo.
Yeah.
Shahir, how you doing, buddy?
Wait, sip of scarpet. This is the worst episode for anyone listening and going, these guys have got really top-notch production value.
Yep, yeah.
Because we are just fucking that all up.
We went off the rails.
Yeah. I'm doing good, buddy. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm hot off the...
You're Matthew McConaughey-ing it?
All right.
Yeah.
Hot off the rails of this film. I went and saw it last night.
Okay.
So I'm psyched to talk about it.
I'm very psyched to talk about it. And I'm not sure. I'm hoping. This is a film where as soon as it ended, I was really excited to talk about it. But I have no idea if we're excited for the same reasons.
Maybe.
Or the opposite reason.
Well, we're never going to know until we do a little housekeeping.
We are going to do a little bit of housekeeping now. If you want to get in touch with us to do some housekeeping, maybe you're a house cleaner, I don't know, you could email us in with your rates at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
I'm gleaning a specific want from you at this current.
I really do. We need some cleaning help. So if you are in the neighborhood.
Tell you what.
Yeah.
Cleaning services for Shahir or general movie questions. Onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Well, we had some fun emails at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. This one from Mihai, who writes us in from Romania.
Hot damn!
Yeah. Well, actually, his email address is Mihai, but he says his name is Andrew. Either way, I discovered your podcast when searching about Mad Max Fury Road. I like this podcast because I like Marvel. Just kidding. Don't worry, Mr. Kroll. I love them. But for real now, what attracts me the most about your podcast is the knowledge you the knowledge you pack in when it comes to movies, and the way you complete each other and the diversity of movies. Do we complete each other?
I think so.
Without
nice.
you, I probably wouldn't have cared about so many movies, which is really nice.
That's super sweet.
Yeah, that is actually really, really lovely to hear. And we hope that the aim of this podcast is to it's to generate some buzz about the movie going
experience,
hobby, yeah.
or even to the point of something that a lot of people have said to me about this biz we call show that we kind of do.
Welcome to the Shahirs and Matt Pat on the Back podcast.
Well, it is. No, but like is the reason they've come and stuck with us is not because, I mean, yeah, we know some facts and that's always cool, but like it sounds like people love talking about movies and apparently we're okay at it.
Mihai goes on to ask the question, which I think, Matt, you should be able to answer this one. This is directly at you. When I watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 with Mom in the cinema, something extraordinary happened. The scene when Rocket comes out, I don't remember the Rocket coming out, but okay. It actually made my mom tear up, which I found interesting because she only tears up at dramas, and I figured you two might have an answer. I know it's not really a question, but you know, he just wanted to know why do we think his mother teared up at a CGI raccoon when she normally goes for traditional dramas, let's say.
I was going to talk about this in the Phase 3 podcast, but I'm going to give a little preview right now.
Ooh.
And I think he sort of means the group sort of coming to terms with like how troubled Rocket sort of like when you find out that moment with Yondu when it's like, oh, it's because I know you, boy, because you're me, and you have this whole buildup of like why Rocket is basically being an asshole the entire time. Mm-hmm. But we've all dealt with sort of I feel like in our friend circles or our family, like problematic people for one way or another, or even beyond that, self-destructive people that don't really notice it or aren't accepting of help and are just sort of that like lash out, etc. And I think there's something, and you take that and you put it in something where I think cinema is something that's wonderful because you can take concepts like that and put it in places you'd least expect it, which would then let perhaps his mother or anyone going to this movie not expecting that sort of experience, it allows it to sort of sneak up on you. Mm-hmm. And it also gives you the 1-2 punch of it coming from an anthropomorphic, very cute animal. And that gives you a whole bunch of other like extra feels on top of that. So I think since you add the surprise factor plus that sort of basic animal lover cute factor, you get some
animal lover.
You get some interesting some responses. I actually watched Guardians 2 last night, and it's still multiple moments in that movie make me tear up. There is something underline emotional about the topic of families and the way families are the family you choose, and there's something incredibly powerful to that in regards to it, and choosing a family that is not perfect and not necessarily always good for one another, but they still stick by one another. I think there's a lot of sort of things that rolls up into one, being why someone who is not normally affected by a comic book movie is affected by this, because this movie does things that normally a comic book movie doesn't do. And I've been deep diving real hard into a lot of the Marvel stuff lately, so that was right in my wheelhouse.
I think I went a little bit broader on that, just to basically say, we should always be open to venturing out of our cinematic comfort zones, and you will be surprised at the things you will discover. Lindsay Ellis actually has a really good video essay that she made called "The Complex Fields of Guardians of the Galaxy."
Yes, check that out.
Check that out, which has kind of got an interesting take on why Guardians of the Galaxy affects her so personally. Thank you again, Mihai, for that email. You can, as I said before, you can reach us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, where we are currently having an ongoing conversation about how Infinity War should actually end with an Infinity orgy. And I hope Phase 3, I might write in a question about this. Your Phase 3 conversation is only building up to the Infinity orgy that we all know, expect, and demand at this stage.
We've mentioned this a few times as Phase 3. Shalia Evans and I are doing a retrospective in all the Marvel movies, all 18 of them leading up to the Infinity War. Eps 1 and 2 are available right now. If you haven't copped those yet, if that's something that interests you, go knock yourself out on there. They're long, but I think that we got stuff to say, and we framed it around a lot of what Shahir has asked from the very beginning of my love affair with Marvel about what do these films mean and what are they actually trying to say. That was super helpful as sort of a structuring device, and we're recording Phase 3 this weekend, and then Infinity War is going to be here before we know it.
There you go.
But before
we move on to Infinity War or the Infinity orgy,
God damn it,
it's got to happen.
A Quiet Place.
A Quiet Place. All right, so should we just get this out of the way?
Okay,
right before we get
what?
Because I don't know what your response was, but when I saw this movie, I got so excited. At the end of it, this was one of those few experiences where I think I actually applauded at the end of this movie, and I was like just so amped. I thought this movie knocked it out of the park. I was so thrilled by what this film did. I know we're going to get into analysis and further thoughts about it, but just as a general thing, that was why I was so excited to chat here. How about was that the same response for you, or
I did not applaud?
Yeah,
but I really loved what I saw for the most part.
Okay.
This film,
not enough to applaud.
I very rarely applaud at the end of it. If it doesn't have an after credit sequence with another hero I recognize, I don't know when I'm going to be applauding for
You
it.
didn't stick around for the after credit sequence?
What? Oh, is it?
It's just all of them standing in a silent sound booth going, this is where we're going to be safe from now on.
Does it pan over and it's The Rock and the white gorilla from Rampage just like telling each other to be quiet? And you're like, it's the same universe.
Exactly.
No, I dug the hell out of it. I think I'd been jonesing for, so lately, a lot of our horror or thrillers have sort of fallen into like two-ish categories.
Okay.
Up to this point, there's been sort of like, the more teen sort of like silly, screamish type stuff, like Happy Death Day, or Truth or Dare that's coming out soon,
which I hear is awful.
It looks pretty bad. Or we're getting like super meaningful, deep psychological horror things like Get Out. You could even break down like The Witch and a lot of A24 stuff a lot of the time. Just very like there's just sort of a sense of almost like current societal stuff intermingling with our horror even more than horror always has been a place for that, but like really stuff seems very poignant now. Mm-hmm. This is neither of those two things. This is a straight up monster survival movie. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the last time I saw one of these that had a world that 99% of it worked, it followed its own rules so closely that got you as intensely on the edge of your seat, muscle tensing over where someone was going to step in a very long time. I think, Jim from The Office. Why am I blanking on his name?
Joseph Krasinski.
Yeah.
John Krasinski.
John Krasinski.
Yeah.
He, from a directorial standpoint, I think killed it. I think he absolutely stepped up to a plate. He'd only done one other thing. I can't remember the name.
He's directed 2 films before, which was the Brief Interviews with Hideous Men, which is the adaptation of the David Foster Wallace book, and The Hollers, which I haven't seen. Now, I kind of heard, his directorial efforts were at this point were low budget indies or kind of smaller independent films. So to go from that to now the #1 film in America at this point, is kind of a big step up. But John Krasinski, Jim from The Office, as everyone knows him. I love his IMDb page, by the way. It says tall, handsome American film and television star John Krasinski. Also, almost Captain America.
He's not wrong. I know that would have been a much different world.
Yeah.
I think everything sort of about this film hits sort of at the right time for me.
Okay.
It is at the core. It is a horror sort of gimmick, that being that the monsters are sound based and that you have to be very, very quiet in this world or else they get you real fast. But it's gimmicks done right. It sets up rules. It follows them. And it makes normal, everyday, trivial things terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's what good horror does.
So tell us what the movie's about.
Well, the movie, if you don't have a computer right now and you can't read IMDb, it goes a little something like this. A family is forced to live in silence while hiding from creatures that hunt by sound. Yeah, it's a simple yet effective premise.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I want to tell you about my day before leading up to the movie.
Oh, no.
So right now we've got a little thing at home. My wife is sick, so normally we divide up our childcare duties.
Your child rearing?
Yeah, we have child rearing duties, but my wife is sick right now, so I've been kind of solo dadding for a little bit, and which is great, by the way. I'm spending some time with my son. He's a lot of fun. We're kind of bonding, which is a lot of fun. But I'd had a day that day where he's gotten into this thing where he started biting me, and he's
you and I live very different lives.
We live very different lives. Yeah, exactly. And the biting was. Like the first time he did it, I was like, okay, he's playing around. He just doesn't realize how painful this is to me. And then the second time he did it, I actually lost my cool, and I was like, and I put him down immediately, and I sent him to timeout. And I'm always very cautious about using timeout. I only want to use it very carefully. I don't want to get angry when I do it. I want to be measured. I want to make sure that he knows and he understands.
It's like antibiotics. You can't just shove him into every problem.
Exactly. You can't do it all the time because he'll just get used to it. But this was one of those times where. When he bit me, I actually yelped out loud because he actually drew blood. And so he immediately understood. He went into timeout and he just stood there. Most of the time I gotta if we're gonna go into timeout, it's a thing.
It's a discussion.
Yeah, it's a discussion.
Get the board of directors.
It's a negotiation is more what it is. So he goes into timeout. I'm sorry if this is a long story, but
no, I'm actually rather enthralled.
This is gonna get us to a point. And then so I leave him in timeout for a couple of minutes, and then I go back to him and I look at him and I know, and he knows, this is the first time in a long time where he knows he's done something wrong.
Sure.
He's got this look on his face, and I say, do you know why I put you in timeout? And he says, because I bit you. Normally I'll put him in timeout and I'll go, do you know why I put you in timeout? He goes, I don't know. And
he knew.
This one he was like, I knew. And then from the rest of the evening, he was compliant, and he was thoughtful and fun and gentle, and he knew that he had kind of hurt me, and he was and he was really trying to go out his way. So that's then I so I put him to bed, and then I rush out the door to make a screening. Side note, the only screening available was RPX, which cost $21 and is not available for Movie Pass. This is the dad brain in me, or the economist in me going, something's wrong here because I don't see what the value is. But anyway, get into the movie. first thing that happens is a young kid is wandering around and has to be quiet and has to be compliant
in the film, not in your theater.
In the film, and I immediately see my son. That's all I see. I see the little kid in the film is a little bit older than my son, but
He's 4.
Yeah, and my son is 2. But I immediately see my son, and I start thinking about, and I start, like automatically before they even start, before anything goes wrong with the son. Spoiler alert. I start feeling, I just have this incredible sense of guilt. I feel bad that I put my son into timeout. I realize that my son is just like, he doesn't know that he's done something wrong. I get dad guilt. Like I feel...
Really?
Yeah. Oh, completely. Because I never want my kid to feel bad.
No, but you're making... Now I know this is turning into the only podcast about parenting, but what you did there was proper parenting etiquette. You taught, in a sense, you're helping him to learn to feel bad when he does something like that so he doesn't do it again.
But I feel terrible because my son, who's like this fun-loving kid, is suddenly now, like all his kind of wild energy that's beautiful and fun and ecstatic and crazy, and that's what makes him, has suddenly been corralled in.
Well, yeah, because he bit you. He's a cannibal. You got to make him not be a cannibal.
But and so I see this kid in this film, and he's basically being told to hold in the primary instinct of what being a kid is about, which is shouting loudly. And the kid's like drawing on the floor, saying, "I'm going to shoot. We'll get away from this by a rocket into space." Mm-hmm. And the kid sees a rocket on a bookshelf, and that's all he wants. And
This is in a department store. They're like scavenging. And
I'm just suddenly like panged with guilt and fear. And all I want to do is go home and I just want to be with my kid again. I'm kind of feeling like, I don't want to be in this movie right now. And then.
So we get into a minor spoiler for the first 10 minutes of the film.
It's the first few minutes of the film. And then what happens is the child does, his childlike instincts immediately step in, and rather than listening to the logic and reasoning of his dad and his mom, played by John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, he takes the toy that he shouldn't take, he takes the batteries that he shouldn't take, and he puts them together, and we see him turn them on, and we realize that it creates a sound. This immediately causes danger, and he's killed. And let me tell you, I can't quite describe the wave of emotion that hit me, because that kid was just trying to be a kid, and he doesn't understand the stakes of what's happening here. And I know, I can't show this movie to my wife. I just can't. She's not. No. She won't watch it.
And there's an interesting thing. I don't want to get away too much from your point, but from the perspective, this is at 86 days from when these monsters came here. There's a newspaper on a wall that says like a meteor hit Mexico. Maybe they're on that. Yeah. They don't really explain it. Yeah. And they hunt by sound. So this kid, if he's 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
He has lived 3.5-ish, or he's 4 years old. He's lived 3.5-ish years of his life being a rambunctious little kid. So I could see, for instance, a newborn into this world, you could kind of train,
maybe.
Possibly more so. But this is a kid that was a kid that now can't be a kid. That's intrinsically sad. I agree.
And it's like there's no way to actually tell him. And so, again, I would say for a lot of people, that would put you off, especially the way my headspace when I was seeing the movie, kind of would be like, I don't want to be in this movie right now. I don't want to do. But what it actually did was it set me into a place where I was on board for what this movie was going to do, because from that point on, everything about this film reflected the terror of what living in a world with no sound actually means. And I thought this movie just played that line so beautifully. And every scene really it played with that idea. It introduced new concepts at every turn of like, how could we get around this? And how can we undo this? And it never you can see, I've read a couple of interviews with John Krasinski where he said he's not a horror guy. He's not, he actually himself said, I'm too scared to go to horror movies. But when he read the script, he said the thing that made me, want to do this film and desperately want to do this film was that it's about a family trying to figure out the reality of their new world under the parameters with which they live. Now, I just think this film just plays that entire thing so well. It demonstrates on another level how inventive you can be with horror, even though we are like, so far into the horror genre where we've almost done anything. This feels new and fresh and something that we haven't quite seen or heard before.
Right.
So I was just 100% on board. When I left the theater, there are a million things that you could pick apart at this movie, but it got me thinking a lot about how if you're on board with a film, it's almost like the little details don't matter. And movies which are about details, I think we're in a stage where we think the details matter, but they don't. What matters is, are we excited by this thing conceptually, and are we on board on the journey? And if the film doesn't break the journey for us, I remember I was thinking back about our It Comes at Night review where there was something that broke the journey for you.
Yeah.
If you are on board with this film, then those little details don't matter. And I think that was this profound sense of like, I was just so on board and on side with this movie.
Yeah, I think it goes down to into the thing I kind of say all the time. It's if you set up rules, don't break them. And this movie doesn't break its rules, other than like, and I'll get into the super minor stuff. But again, it's checks and balances too. For instance, a film that I feel like I do not enjoy anymore, even though I enjoy 90% of it, is Signs.
Right. I like Signs a lot.
The Signs analogy is, okay, so the whole thing, it's very clever. Spoiler for Signs, I don't know, but basically aliens come down, Mel Gibson and his family fight them off and figure out that actually the thing that takes down these monsters, these aliens, is water. And then they defeat them and make them run off scared, right?
And baseball bats, right?
Well, yeah, that'll do it for anybody.
Yeah.
But the reason why the end of that film and that twist of water breaks the film for me is that at that point the film is forcing you to make a decision of, okay, so now these interstellar creatures have flown here in a spaceship, and they've been doing so far is killing and eating people. But people are made of
water.
But people are made of 70% water on a planet that's made of 80% water, and it breaks. It doesn't jive with me anymore, so it takes me out of the movie-going experience. This film never did that. This film, its rules are and its structure. I could look. You're right about this. If I wanted to, and I will at the end of this because it's fun, I could pick it apart and make it not make sense.
Yeah,
but it keeps you engaged through very visceral, and that's the word I'd use for this film, storytelling. Enough where you don't really want to pick it apart, especially not during.
Yeah. No.
And you can sort of after the fact. Again, I go back to there's a part in the film, and I don't really want to spoil too much of this film, weirdly enough, and I don't think we have to talk about its effectiveness or where it might stumble here or there. Mm-hmm. There's a part where there's a nail sticking out of
Chekhov's nail.
Sticking out of a floorboard of a step.
Yeah.
And someone steps on it and has to be quiet, and instantly that's a real tense thing for anybody. But then even after that happens, it's still there the rest of the movie, to the point where anytime another character, I'm like, they're not going to do this gag twice. Mm-hmm. This is a minor spoiler, they don't.
Yeah.
But to the point where I'm like, oh my God, the daughter's working on this. No.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I literally, when there's a part where the monster comes downstairs, I was like, monster's going to step on a nail.
I was thinking the same thing. And isn't that amazing? I think, the other thing was that, obviously the film is so quiet that you hear everyone in the theater kind of either chewing on food or whispering to each other, or
that was our joke with the carrots.
But in my theater, which is pretty full, nobody was kind of like distracted. If they were whispering at all or they were making noise, they were making noise about the movie. They were reacting to the movie, they were engaging with the movie. So it was kind of like this effective. It kind of also demonstrated as well this thing that like we forget about. Sound is 50% of the movie kind of thing.
Yeah,
and how effective silence is.
Restraint. Actually, during it, so I had Jamie and I got popcorn and we ate, but we finished most of it before the movie because that's just trailers are long enough where you finish all your food anyway.
I'm that obnoxious guy who doesn't eat the popcorn until the movie starts.
Oh, you are the worst.
I'm the worst person to go to a movie with.
But so I'd finished it and put the bag down on the ground, and I had my legs crossed, and at one point I moved my leg and crunched the bag, and no one was mad or anything like that, but I felt myself tense up like I hadn't before, because this film has set you up to be like, any noise is bad, and I just died.
Yeah,
I would be dead.
You would be dead.
And that's a really powerful mechanic for this film to actually engage in. I think.
I tell you, I don't like the word gimmick. You know, when you use the word gimmick to describe it, because yes, you could. Technically, you can call it a gimmick, but it's so ingrained into what the film is about that I don't feel like gimmick quite apply. Gimmick has this sort of connotation of huckstering or trickery or something like that. Whereas
It's gimmick for a good purpose. I mean, maybe I get the connotation that you're getting from when I say gimmick. Maybe I could change it to simple idea.
I think concept, you know,
concept?
Like it is, conceptually, it's a film about sound. But okay.
I get it. Gimmick does have a negative and I could think of some movies in the past that I've used the term gimmick on. I do mean to use in a sort of negative sense. So maybe I should change it when I do mean something positive. I don't. Concept, sure.
Yeah.
I think because a concept is. Oh God, this is going to be weirdly and heady, and I'm going to try to talk myself around it. But like a concept is. What I would hope it'd be a well thought out mechanic used in this case film.
You could say it's a mechanic as well.
Yeah, where a gimmick is sort of something like Happy Death Day has a gimmick.
Yeah, there's
the Groundhog Day thing, and that is a gimmick for that. Okay, yeah, I get that.
So, I mean, yes, you can, and I will wholeheartedly say there are some things in this movie that kind of are silly. There's a couple of things that are silly.
The it's weird to say the writing is poor.
No, I don't.
Well, the dialogue. I mean, but dialogue. I mean, hold on. This is where I have two story character issues.
Okay,
and maybe you can talk me through them, and maybe they won't be a problem for me anymore.
Okay.
One of which is, so due to the death of the youngest son, you're left with a family of four, a mother, a father, a daughter, and a son. Daughter's older, also deaf, played by a deaf actress.
Yeah.
Which worked very well.
Millicent Simmons.
Yes. So every one of the family has their own little piece of guilt for the death of their fifth family member, the youngest child.
Yeah, except for the youngest kid.
Well, the youngest kid, it's weird because so they set up everyone else in this movie. The mother feels guilt because she had a free arm and could have carried him.
Yeah.
The father feels guilt because he's supposed to, like in this sort of thing, protect the family and keep them safe. And the daughter feels guilty because she gave him the toy back, even though the batteries were out, and then the littlest kid took the batteries. So that's the sort of thing like that. The son, I feel like probably it feels like almost a cutting room floor thing of the son feeling guilt for it because he was sick and the reason why they were looking for medication in that drugstore in the first place. Yeah. They don't get into that.
Yeah.
But the conflict, I would say, between the daughter and the father felt a little forced to me. And because there's this particular moment where you're supposed to glean that like the father... It happens almost in the wrong order for me to make total sense of it. So in order of operations, the father has been working diligently. He's not an electrical engineer. He's just trying to like learn how to make a hearing aid to assist his daughter.
Yeah. He's a farmer, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is a family of farmers.
Yeah. And so he's trying to do it, and he presents her another hearing aid, and she's like, it doesn't work, and he keeps trying to put it on her head, and she's like, it never works, and they get into a sort of not verbal altercation but a sign altercation, and she's so angry at him. And I was like, okay. And then the next time where we see them clash is when he's going out to teach the son how to fish and collect stuff and not be scared of the open world, and show him the river where they can actually talk because the waterfall, which I thought was a beautiful scene and a great mechanic. Why not move there? Yeah. So
continue. Yeah. I've got something that makes me chuckle.
So and then the daughter is super angry that he's not bringing her.
Yeah.
And I get that. It's almost like I wish those scenes were in an opposite order so you could see a little bit, like you could piece together outside of the plot that the film is showing you how their relationship could be strained, but it didn't flow in a natural narrative sense to me on why it was so butting heads, even to the point where there's a part where the two kids are hiding from the monster and the daughter's like, he's gonna come for you, not me. Yeah. And I was like, that's a little extreme. Like, and I think
Wait, say that again.
They're on top of the grain silo,
right?
And the son's like, "Don't worry, he's going to come for us. He's going to come for us." And she's like, "He's going to come for you," because they're pushing the narrative that the father doesn't care about it. It's just not handled. You have to do it, I feel like, and I don't know the absolute correct way. I just feel like there was a bit of a misstep, I think, because of the structure of how dialogue was portrayed, that something of that interpersonal relationship got lost. I almost feel like I'm literally talking about it too long for the tiny amount that it bothered me.
Right.
And then the other side of it is because of all the silence, the moments where there are a little bit more dialogue or larger moments feel over dramatic.
Right.
And that's I can't even blame anyone for that, but there's two moments in the film where people like scream, like well, not counting the wife under some other things. And those two moments, I don't know, maybe the first one doesn't, there's an old man in the woods and there's some reasoning why he does it, but then the second time it just in those moments I don't think it would have been a scream. If I needed to make a lot of noise, I would have made my last words sort of count. I don't know. Anyway,
in a world where aliens are hunting us down, Matt would have had a soliloquy for his final moments.
Well, no, to the point I'm just, instead of screaming, like maybe like yelling "I love you" to sort of further down a thing, or like you could, I don't know. There was little bits that made, and again, didn't throw me out of the experience at all. It's just, if I need to find places where I have a nit to pick, those are really them as far as a script perspective.
So I think we should really jump straight into like heavy spoilers at this point. If you haven't seen the film, please, my highest recommendation to see it.
Yeah, same.
Absolutely go see it in a movie theater and see it. Try. I think the thing that's great about this film is it nullifies bad movie going experiences, because it's so good. And so if you go to a movie theater that happens to be kind of known to be a movie theater where people talk, I don't think they're going to talk during this movie.
Oh, I bet you they will.
I don't know. The movie theater I went to is one where people talk a lot.
Where'd you go?
Astoria. You know, Astoria. You know, you get a lot of people in that movie theater, shouting and talking and on their phones and that sort of thing. Not a hint of that in this movie, and it was a pretty big audience. So absolutely go see this film. Stunning. It is the third film by John Krasinski, but I think it's the one that puts him on the map, so to speak.
100%.
So in spoilers, I think the thing about the interpersonal relationships there's a couple of things I want to think about on a deeper level about this movie.
Let's do it.
Which is the societal value of horror. And we've already talked ad nauseum, and I think it's been celebrated enough to discuss a film like Get Out, which has an important societal reflection. And obviously from a critical theory standpoint, any film can have societal relevance if you interpret it in that way. And I think the thing that was interesting for me is watching this movie is that in general there's a sort of absence of societal reflection in this film. Well, the mode of operation of this movie tends to be quite primary. It's quite primal. It's about like figuring out problems that matter right now and how do we solve them, and then and discovery as we go along. Like if we think about a film like Jaws, for example, Jaws has like this sort of interesting counter narrative about World War II and surviving World War II only to be eaten by predators. There's a sort of finiteness about life.
Who are the predators in that particular now?
It was actually predators. Like predators came down, from the movie Predator,
right,
and they were under the water, incognito mode, so they could browse for porn.
Wow.
But I think there's a sort of primacy about this film that is actually what is beautiful about it. I would say, though, the things that you're talking about, particularly in the case of Millicent's character, whose her name was Regan.
It's hard to remember the names of these characters because they don't speak them.
Yeah, they don't speak that much. Is the sense of I think there must be. Imagine living in a world where sound is one of the most critical factors you must now have, and not being able to hear.
Super frustrating.
So the level of, and I think this film actually really plays into that, where they do really interesting things. Like, for example, occasionally the film will actually allow us to get into Regan's perspective.
It's so good.
By cutting out the room tone. Like most films have.
Well, adding white noise.
They actually, in my opinion, they just cut the room tone out. So you would go from a scene where you could hear ambient, and then they would cut to her point, like a shot of her, and you wouldn't see it. And I think the first place that they do this
is in the store.
Is actually outside the store, when we see in the background the lights of the rocket ship are now going.
Oh,
and we like she's completely oblivious.
That's
to
the first big moment. They do it in the store when it's just the youngest son drawing on the ground and her. That's where they sort of introduce it. I'm fairly sure, and please write us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com and tell me if you know this or not. I do think they must add a little bit of white noise or tone to it, because I heard a ringing.
Perhaps, yeah. It may be because that would tie in later into the story. I didn't hear the ring. I just heard my ear is trained to hear poor use of ambient tone. And so when it cuts out, I was like, oh, and they're doing this for a specific purpose because this character can't hear.
I'd be super interested to talk to, if anyone knows also anybody who did the sound on this movie, I would love to pick their brains.
If you have a connection to John Krasinski, email us at onlymoviepodcast.
Well, no, we have industry people listen. I'm curious about some things.
All right. So so I think as well, there's a level and the thing that you have to do in this film to essentially die. It seems like there is no. There was one rule in this movie: don't make any sound. And if you break that rule, you die. And so I think the growing level of frustration of living in a world where that is the boundaries with which you live in are so devastating and so imposing that when that man screams at the end, when they come across the couple and one of them has died and
the old man in the woods,
and the old man screams, I kind of understand the level of frustration that must be of just like, you know what? Fuck it.
Sure.
I'm done.
The thing about both screams, or the thing about even when the daughter is frustrated with the father, and of course, everything's got to be incredibly frustrating. We are gleaning and maybe this is a thing where you don't need this sort of extra level of information that maybe I do. We only see one time jump. We see 89 days and then 400 and whatever days. So that's a year. They've been dealing with this for a year. No question. But a lot of times in these films, when people start getting frustrated and making mistakes or doing crazy stuff because everything's so tense and so frustrating, it shows that sort of grow. Yeah. Throughout it. And here it jumps, and it's just everyone's instantly frustrated all the time. And it makes narrative sense, but from a character's perspective, I have a harder time. Again, I got on board, but it wasn't a smooth ride when specifically talking about character frustration, because I had to assume it, and it wasn't. I assumed it due to the world building and not what happened with the characters.
I just, and in terms of societal value of horror, so this is going to be, again, I want to really preface everything I'm about to say from this point on, which is to say, I love the movie.
Yes.
I love the movie.
I love the movie too.
I love what the movie did. I love the experience of seeing the movie. And so this is just kind of exploring in a critical way some of the conversation we can develop from this point on.
Sure.
But for example, the societal value, the thing that struck me about the way in which this film operates in terms of basically taking away one of our primary senses. There's another film called Blindless that came out a few years ago that starred Gael Garcia Bernal, and I think it was I can't remember the director's name, but it was essentially a film where people were going blind and they're put into a single asylum, and then one person goes in because she has sight. So there's a sense of inducing madness.
I've seen that. Who was the actress?
It was I'm going blank on her name. Red-headed actress, Julianne
Moore. Sorry, I was looking. I was trying to get to the same film that you were listing on IMDb, and I had to go through Children of Men to get there. Sorry, continue.
And it kind of the film kind of descends into this sort of madness, and I can imagine the sense of taking away another faculty like sound could induce madness. Oddly as well, I also thought there's a video game that you and I have played and talked about, This War of Mine, where I started thinking about like the oppressive nature of being under attack. And, you know, like the sense that this family is just constantly under attack. And there's an oddity to you know, like, you know, and I wondered if there was a way for this film to kind of like introduce a broader message. But again, that's just me spitballing. I think that's the kind of thing me as a director would be like, oh, this is a bigger exploration of the way the world works. And I'm like, I like that the film actually didn't do it, you know, like, because I think that would just kind of like take it into another realm where it might not have worked as well.
There's a lot of think pieces out there, a lot of articles, because every film has to have some sort of weird subtext to it. I don't think this one does, but you can add subtext to anything. So one of the main ones that I saw was that, well, it reflects our current world of if anybody speaks out about anything on the internet, you get torn down to shit. And like,
I think that's a real reach. But
exactly. I agree. It's 100% a reach.
Yeah.
The people are talking about in the political climate, it's so volatile. And like, it's the same sort of thing. And I'm like, that's not what they were thinking. They were thinking, what's a cool way for monsters to hunt people? Sound. Boom. Got it. And then we could do a whole movie that's super quiet. Like, that's where this came from. It wasn't like, I'm trying to talk about it, the way we communicate as humans and blah, blah, blah.
And I think the family dynamic is really what works here. It's this idea. Now, the other, just one side note. Again, this is the only podcast about side notes. Side note first. I was speaking to a friend today, and I was getting excited about the movie. And I was telling him, oh, you got to go see it. I don't want to spoil it. And that friend, again, we're in spoilers here. She goes, oh yeah, the kid dies at the beginning, right? And then the mother gets accidentally pregnant, and they've got to figure out how to keep the kid silent. And I was like, how do you know all that if you haven't seen the film? She goes, I don't know. I just know all that stuff. And I was like, this is the reason I don't watch trailers, because I was like,
I don't remember the kid dying in the trailer.
Maybe not, but I was like, there's just too much information out there. And I didn't know any of that. Right. I hadn't watched the trailer. So I kind of I experienced this firsthand. And so I think if I knew that the mother had gotten pregnant, the first thing that and like I had time to process that rather than actually just experiencing it in the movie, the first thing I would be like, wait a minute, you guys know that you live in a world where sound is like the killer and you're about to have a child? You know, like, isn't that...
I mean, I feel like it was a mistake.
It might have been a mistake, but I was like, Jesus, guys, use some protection or something. Or maybe don't do it. You know, like, I don't know. There was something about that kind of like, when you think about it, it's like, again, as the movie was playing, didn't question it.
You want to know some other things if you think about it? I don't want.
Oh, I got plenty.
Oh, you got more? Let's go.
Like peeing. You're not peeing in the toilet anymore, and you're not peeing in the wood. Like, how do you pee?
Yeah, how do you poop, depending on what you're doing?
I mean, well, poop, you could like lay down some toilet paper in the, but you're not going to flush.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you going to do there? Again, doesn't matter. It's not in the movie. That's not what the movie's about. But I was just like, and then there was this other thing. Like, I remember this from an Eddie Murphy routine where he talked about Poltergeist and the difference between black people and white people. This is like classic 80s comedy kind of like shtick, you know, white people do this, black people do this. And there was this thing where he was like, you know, if a black person had walked into Poltergeist and, you know, and heard a voice saying, get out, and be like, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. And I was like, this family lives on this farm, and it's like they're besieged by alien attackers on all sides of them. Rather than leave and, like you say, go live by a noisy place like the water, which could, like, you know, protect you in some way. Yep. They decide to stay.
Why not?
You know, why not stay and like try to figure it out? I was like, okay.
Yeah, Jim sets up his conspiracy theorist basement with the most narrative whiteboard I think I've ever seen in my entire.
So that whiteboard, that whiteboard is a real problem for me. I was like, really, Jim? You wrote this down?
Rules. Be quiet. Real quiet.
And then also, like, Melissa, you know, like the character Regan kind of like, it's almost like she's reading it for the first time at the end of the movie.
I know. And then like I like the monster number and area in a box that just says 3. I'm like, okay.
I get what the narrative, again, didn't question it as it was happening.
No, but it was very silly when they cut back to it. It's like, why are they here? Like, it's just newspaper clippings and stuff. The other thing, look, because we could either praise it so much or we could talk about some silly stuff near the end of this podcast. Okay, so the spoiler alert again is how they kind of sort of learn to defeat the monsters is through a high-pitched frequency that emitted out of one of the failed hearing aids that Jim had made for his daughter. And it's interesting because we learn that as an audience before the characters learn it, because it happens, and obviously the daughter is deaf, so she can't hear that, or see or hear.
But she feels it, though.
She feels it, but it happens behind her,
right? And she doesn't know that it's emitting a sound. She just has a headache.
And eventually they learn that they can actually sort of weaponize it, and they put it through the PA system that they have running, and it stuns it enough for Emily Blunt to shotgun blast the crap out of one
clicker?
of these, out of a clicker. Yeah. I love the side note. I love the monster design. I feel like this humanoid Cloverfield-esque type thing has gotten refined down to like, this is a style of alien at this point. And the way that the headpiece is moved up, and like it always had weight and presence, and it always felt. It was the realest feeling monster like that I've seen in a while.
It also makes like their design makes narrative sense, because like their function is they can hear really well.
So like they open up their little head cave, and like there's giant ears or like ear holes.
The last time I saw something like that really kind of worked for me was Robert Zemeckis' film Beowulf, when they showed the Beowulf creature has like really sensitive hearing, and that's why he's driven crazy. Yeah. So I loved when they cut to like the eardrums of this creature.
So then the daughter finds out that that's how you fight him, and then they're able to do it, and it ends with a beautiful, beautiful shotgun cock by Emily Blunt. But this is my thing.
Right.
There's newspaper clippings everywhere. It's sound, and it's like all this stuff about it. You're telling me the government that I know has supersonic weapons didn't figure out how to beat these things in a week?
Yeah.
Like, this is something where it's like, oh, really? They have sensitive hearing? Get the sonic guns.
Yeah.
Like, that. It's just,
it seems obvious to me. Yeah, I agree. But it's that thing again.
But you don't care. You don't care in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, you could probably added some constriction to the film that meant that, like you could narratively write that away.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from the experience of like living through the trauma. And I think we sort of don't, we're not putting as much weight on how skillful the writing and the directing is to kind of put us in that situation where we don't question those things.
The story writing is excellent.
Yeah, where we don't actually feel, and I think the directing is excellent too. Mm-hmm. I've read a think piece this week which talked about how it misses the kind of visual audacity of silent movies, because it's kind of playing in it's playing in the world of silent movies, and there's a long history of silent movies. And what this writer argues is that silent movies tend to will allow the filmmaker to overemphasize visual storytelling, and this film doesn't particularly innovate as far as visual storytelling goes. There's nothing particularly innovative. But again,
it's not a silent movie.
It's not a silent movie.
It's a quiet movie.
Exactly.
It's not called A Silent Place.
Exactly. And I think, my point to that was as well as like, there are movies which emphasize silence. There's a great tradition of
Martin Scorsese, silence.
Not quite.
I'm kidding.
Auditory films like Francis Ford Coppola's film, The Conversation, Brian De Palma's film, Blowout. Those are films about sound, so they overemphasize. This is a movie about a family dynamic dealing with a terror and seeing how they will deal with it. The other thing that we could really go on here is the actual pregnancy itself, which is like delivering, a baby that remains silent. I know they induce it with oxygen and that sort of thing, but like she's up there for a while and doesn't scream and then
fireworks hit at the right. That's clever.
It's clever. It works. And you know what? In the moment, I absolutely 100% bought into it, adored it, thought it was genius. And I still do. Even though I could nitpick it, even though we could like...
I have one more nitpick.
Keep going.
Just for fun. So I didn't know this. I wasn't sure, but I did some research. And I'm going to call this nitpick the corn conundrum.
Okay.
So corn is a vegetable and a crop that is not something that is sustaining.
Yeah.
So it means that like, you pick corn and then the husk is dead. You have to rip it up. You can use it for other things and you have to plant corn again.
Yeah.
Those are some pretty perfect corn rows for day 400 and whatever the hell.
Right.
They would have had to have used farm equipment to plant that corn in that neat of a pattern.
Yeah.
And I just found, or they'd have to, I don't know how they do it quiet. Like, I don't know. It was just an interesting thing. I'm like, how are they getting that corn? I was like, maybe there's a genus of corn that'll just keep growing. There isn't. So It's like you said, but cornfields are one of my favorite tropes in horror movies,
right?
And I don't care that it doesn't. That
it's that thing again. If you're on board with the movie,
I was very on board.
It doesn't matter because again, the movie is experiential as well. There's no sense of people sitting down to explain the rules of the game.
Yeah.
So there's no chance to like actually get ahead of the movie.
Other than the whiteboard. That whiteboard explains it.
Yeah, that's true. Apart from the whiteboard. At least it's not, but at least it wasn't like John Krasinski and Emily Blunt kind of sitting down and saying, where do these aliens come from? What do you think their weakness is? Like
they had a really beautiful moment together with the iPod or whatever.
Yeah, playing a little bit of music. Yeah. And it was like I'm glad it was an old iPod as well, like not one of the ones that actually has a speaker now where you accidentally like
you unplug it, and it's just like, wah! And you're like, oh no.
Oh no. Is that what they were listening to Korn? They were listening to Korn?
No, that's Disturbed.
Oh, is it?
They weren't down with the sickness, no.
So, yes, you could argue there, and I feel like a critic like Armand White would kind of like, find some sort of societal imperfection or imbalance in this film. But again, it's so experiential. It works so well. There's no denying the power of this film. It's the #1 film in America right now for very good reason.
It's good.
It actually creates an audience experience that is resonant as well. Like the notion that they keep the final moment. Mm-hmm. Where the movie crescendos up. This is one of my favorite things in film, and it's one of the things that I think is really, really difficult to do. It's something that the ending of The Godfather did. It's something the ending of Animal Kingdom did. It's this idea that a film doesn't just like denouement away and kind of like hit its highest point and then kind of like trail away. This actually crescendos at like one of the at a peak moment and then cuts to black.
Mila Jovovich is hard at the end of this movie.
That's not the reference I would have used, but
it's correct.
Is it? What are we?
Resident Evil.
Okay.
It's the same ending shot as Resident Evil. This is better. Okay. This is better. I'm saying she out Mila'd Mila.
Okay, that must be what they were thinking as well. They would have been like, you know what, Mila Jovovich did this thing in Resident Evil. We gotta go to town on this.
Of course, they weren't thinking that, but I just like the reference because
you know it.
Yeah, because I know it. Yeah. I like things I know. They're comfortable.
I think that crescendo was amazing. Look, one of my serious nitpicks, one of my ones where I actually think it is okay to like not be on board with this, is the music. I thought that there was a real opportunity here to do something sort of primal and elemental with the sound, like a la Johan Johansson, who recently passed away, but he did the score for Sicario, the score for Under the Skin or something like that, where you're living in a world where sound is one of the most important things, and to that end, the music that plays under scenes, of melodrama or things like that feel very much like sort of traditional movie music as opposed to like something extraordinary, except for the final scene where the movie basically says, okay, we've lived in silence for this entire movie. So now we're just going to like let loose. The score ramps up and it actually, again, listening to it on RPX, $21, it actually does play really dynamically left to right. Yep. And so it kind of works. But I did think the score was a little underwhelming.
I agree because I don't remember it.
Right. Yeah. It's not memorable. Here's the thing though. Even as I made that criticism, because I was making a note of that while I was watching the film, I was like, this is such a difficult movie to actually edit, because I can imagine you're kind of like trying to figure out what is the tolerance level of the audience to have this movie in silence at this point. Now, there are bold filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock who've made, a film like The Birds with no score whatsoever. So there is precedent for films to do something like that. And again, the Michael Levy score for Under the Skin is this elemental, pure, raw thing that is disturbing in ways that I can't quite describe.
Right.
So I would have loved it if the film kind of took that extra cinematic step and kind of did something with the score. But I also think they were playing a real tightrope here, which was like, how much can the audience actually take of this? There's a Ukrainian film that I recently, and I watched actually just to reference it because I've always wanted to see it. It's a Ukrainian film about a deaf school.
Okay.
Where and the opening credit of the film is called The Tribe. Opening credit of the film is the characters in this film are deaf. Everything is said in sign language. There is no translation or subtitles. And it's like, here you go. And
welcome to Thunderdome.
Yeah, exactly. And I watched the film, and it is incredible how much the film either cues you or you actually just start absorbing the visual language of sign language, and you start figuring out what's happening in this film without hearing anyone speak. And if you don't know sign language, without actually understanding what's happening. So I think, there's without a doubt more that could have been done, that could have, played into sort of cinematic experimentation. This is a crowd-pleasing film, so it actually, it kind of veers away from that, I guess in some respect, but it works so well. Yeah. I feel like an asshole for saying things like that. You know what I mean?
No, I think a keystone for a great film for me, the closer you come to perfect, the more I'll try to find to nitpick, right? That's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
And I can't find a particular nit in this batch of picking that is worth a damn.
Yeah.
Like, that's the other thing about it. Like, yeah, we can make fun of the whiteboard and the corn and where do they pee, but that's all stuff that the movie doesn't give a shit about, and make sure and the audience, it teaches you not to give a shit about it. So it's a hand wave, and it's fine, because guess what? These aren't actual moving images. It's just a bunch rolling in a rapid succession that tricks your visual cortex into thinking that stuff's moving in front of you on a flat surface.
Yeah. No. And then just a couple of other things I wanted to point out as well, which I thought was really fun. I know this might be a little bit contentious here, but one of the things that came up in an interview with Emily Blunt and John Krasinski was, they were like, look, because they both had the opportunity to be in Marvel movies at some point, and they really specifically pointed this out. They were like, if we had taken those opportunities, this movie wouldn't exist. If we had, kind of jumped into the Marvel world, we wouldn't be able to make this movie. And look, I know that is contentious. I know what your feeling is about it, but I know it's a good headline grabber, but I think there is some truth to that. One of the things I like about something I wanted to point out that I don't know we've done consciously or not, but since episode 145, and we're up to 155 right now, notwithstanding 2 episodes.
Must be 156.
Notwithstanding 2 episodes in that lineup, everything we've done for the last 10 episodes, apart from your Marvel things, are original films.
Yeah.
And I get that was the thing that excited me, because the other thing was this film was at some point discussed as being a Cloverfield film. They talked about introducing this into the Cloverfield universe, and they were, the writers said we were certainly asked about, could we, transform some of this into a Cloververse in some way. I could 100% see that.
You could do it.
You could see it, but I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah,
same. And I'm glad that this film stands up on its own feet. It's an original property. There's no sense that there needs to be a sequel to this film at all. There's no sense that the film is trying to build anything that would franchise upon it. It is just telling a good story, succinctly and well. And it doesn't overstay its welcome at all. This film just does what it does and gets out.
2 points about the Marvel thing.
Yeah.
One,
I knew that would be.
It's okay. One, I think you're right. It's a headline. It's a clickbaity, grabby thing. But because and we don't really know this 100% yet. But once Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and everyone sort of bow out of the MCU, that's when we're going to determine whether or not, if someone took a Marvel job, they'll ever be able to make their passion project. You know what I mean? For instance, Chris Evans right now is on Broadway. They're doing stuff they want to do on the side of this thing. They're just doing the paycheck movie, then they're doing the whatever stuff, and we'll see how that goes. He did Snowpiercer. I think that's a cute way of saying that they're trying to, and it's not bad, and I'm not saying they're regretting their life choices. I don't think they are, but that's sort of just trying to take and it's an obnoxious question to ask these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's turning a frown upside down in a weird sort of way.
And they were very cautious to say, look, we don't want to say that anyone working for Marvel is kind of shilling or anything like that.
Zoe Saldana has a beautiful quote out right now about when actors or other industry people get upset that they think they're shilling for Marvel and doing all this stuff. How much good that these actors in these roles do for kids and children. There's a whole bunch. He does this whole diatribe. Look it up on the internet. I'd butcher it if I tried it. The second thing about the Marvel stuff and why I'm glad that this didn't go a Cloverfield way. I don't want anyone to ever think that my opinion is just because Marvel is able to connect all of their franchises and do a collective cinematic universe that I want this anywhere else. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a type of filmmaking that I really like, that I don't want anyone else to do because I just need one thing like that.
Right.
I think that's another big reason, other than the fact there's lots of problematic things, why the Dark Universe, the DC Extended Universe, Cloverfield, now that we got that Netflix piece of shit, like these things aren't working because the cultural zeitgeist is full of that. And I know myself particularly, I like that with Marvel. Great. Now I want it when I'm outside that world. I don't want everything to be a shared universe, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that was my main point here, is that I like that this is not only is it not a shared universe, like it's not in the Cloverfield universe, there's no sense of trying to do something which requires you to buy another movie ticket.
Just the movie.
We're just like, we want you to get the most out of the $21 that you spent here.
Someone's salty.
I am salty about that. But you should, again, I've mentioned this book a couple of times. You should read that book, The Big Picture, The Fight for the Future of Movies, by Ben Fritz. It's got an incredible analysis of what's happened to Sony because of, how successful Marvel was and how much Sony wasn't able to continue.
Keep up.
Yeah, well, they weren't able to keep up, and they weren't able to kind of continue what they had been doing for years, which was make one big Spider-Man movie, one big James Bond movie, and then spend the rest of their time worrying, about original properties that they could kind of develop.
Don't worry, Venom's coming out in October.
Yeah, gotta make that spider sling somewhere.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about A Quiet Place. Shahir, when you are not secretly in your under mattress basement room mumbling how you hate the MC.
Oh my God, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, you wouldn't be, because you'd be whispering it because you couldn't speak it. Whisper your rage. I
would whisper silently into your ear at my website.
Ooh.
Because I can do that.
This got saucy.
Yeah, at shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt, when you are hiding away from the sound beasts that are at the other side of your door. That analogy went nowhere.
It's my cat. You just described my cat.
Yeah, your cat wouldn't survive this.
No, Zoe, we actually talked about that on the way home. Zoe would be so dead.
Yeah.
Oh. When I'm not imagining, thanks, Shahir, my cat's inevitable demise due to sound monsters, you can find me at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also Skeletor, the number 4, PRZ on Instagram, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. We're doing the last phase 3 Marvel thing coming up. You've seen them down the feeds. Listen up if you like that, or just skip them if you don't. You're gonna take us out with something special, Shahir.
Yeah, I was hoping to segue into it something.
No. He held up his phone, but this is so good.
Because I was, again, looking after my son, having that trauma, as soon as after I'd seen this movie, I went back home to my son and I kind of gave him an extra cuddle as he was in bed asleep. And then the next day I was kind of thinking about the implausibility of keeping a child quiet under these circumstances. There's no way you do it. You'd have to go live next to a sound factory or some kind of
sound factory?
Yeah, a sound factory. Yeah.
Where they just manufacture.
Yeah, white noise.
Noise.
Yeah, just manufacture. Or you'd live under the waterfall. Yeah. Why wouldn't you live under the waterfall? Come on, people. Think about your architectural surroundings. Anyway, and so my son just started screaming for no reason. He just started shouting, and I was like, I got to record this. And as soon as I, of course, held up my phone to try and record it, he immediately stopped and was like, no, I don't want to do this. But eventually, I did coax him into doing one thing and one thing only, which I'm very proud of, and I want to use it to take us out.
All right.
And here it is, my son taking us away, and we have been...
the only podcast about movies.
You say it again?
The only podcast of the movies.
Thank you.